Okay, let's shatter a massive historical myth right out of the gate. You know that classic image of the 1950s? One man working, one woman staying home, the suburbs just humming along in perfect economic harmony? Well, we've been totally sold a narrative. Because if you dig into the actual historical data, a completely different and frankly much cooler story emerges. Women were quietly running these sprawling, off-the-books micro-enterprises right from their homes. To put this into perspective, think about the median male salary in the late 1950s. It sat right around $4,700 a year. But a savvy housewife, using informal networks, could quietly generate up to $4,496 a year. And she did this without ever leaving her kitchen or punching a corporate time card. We're not talking about a few pennies of pocket change here. This was serious, untaxed wealth that literally funded college tuitions, bought cars, and built a massive safety net for the family.
Part 1, the 15 Forgotten Wealth Builders. Let's see how this built into an incredible decentralized network of female-led microenterprises, moving right from the kitchen into a literal empire.
First up is egg money. And no, this wasn't just some quaint hobby. Because tending to a flock of chickens was culturally viewed as women's work, the cash generated from it was entirely hers to control. A modest flock could produce enough surplus eggs to sell to neighbors or local stores. It effectively became a localized credit union, generating hundreds of dollars a year. That's cash women used to barter for household goods or even buy big-ticket items like a piano for the kids. Then there were laundry services, which is a brilliant example of how domestic labor was monetized. Before everyone had a washing machine, laundry was a grueling, all-day affair. But women who took in just a few extra loads a week for their neighbors could earn up to $520 annually. Now that might not sound like a fortune today, but back then, it allowed a woman working from her own kitchen to literally match the median income of formerly employed wives. Zero startup costs, zero commute. Next is piecework sewing. Think of this as the original gig economy. Factories outsourced the assembly of garments to women at home. And sure, they were paid literal pennies per completed piece, sewing collars or hems late into the night by gaslight or early electric lamps. But here's the genius part. Highly skilled women would organize sewing circles, pool their contracts together, and exponentially increase their output to clear thousands of dollars a year. Moving right along, we hit the food economy. This is where women built deep community trust and created their own micro-brands. They transformed raw ingredients into premium, high-margin products. We're talking custom cakes for neighborhood parties, selling surplus vegetables from home gardens, and putting up hundreds of jars of preserves for the winter. They were completely running their own supply chains. A really successful baker or canner could easily net enough every month to cover the entire family mortgage. Women also capitalized big time on the post-war urban migration and the baby boom. They converted spare bedrooms into boarding rooms, which was essentially the 1950s version of Airbnb. They set up private daycares or evening nurseries for the neighbors. Some even ran fully functioning beauty salons right out of their basements or kitchens. They essentially turned their domestic space into highly profitable commercial real estate. Next, we see them capturing the administrative market. Women were effectively inventing the virtual assistant role before the internet even existed. They operated small home-based switchboards, taking messages for local doctors or plumbers. They completely pioneered network marketing through things like Tupperware parties, blending social influence with direct sales. And they monetized their brains too, charging for private tutoring and music lessons.
Rounding out our list of 15, we have women turning their hobbies into pure profit. Creating and selling handicrafts, jewelry, quilts, or breeding small animals like puppies and birds. But honestly, the most surprising one? Penny stock clubs. Thousands of all-female investment networks popped up. Women would pool small amounts of cash, maybe $10 a month, and they'd research and buy stocks together. They built incredibly impressive, localized wealth portfolios entirely on their own.
So, what's the ultimate secret here? The compound strategy. These women rarely did just one of these jobs. They stacked them. You might have a woman tending a flock of chickens in the morning, taking in 3 loads of laundry by noon, and doing piecework sewing in the evening. By compounding these invisible income streams, a housewife could systematically out-earn her husband's factory wage, all while officially being recorded by the US Census as unemployed. Crazy, right? Part 2. Pattern break. The systemic demolition. Because these booming invisible economies, they didn't just fade away naturally. They didn't simply become obsolete. They were deliberately and systematically dismantled.
A massive cultural and economic shift happened right under everyone's noses. We moved from the pre-1950s era of home production, where the kitchen was essentially an economic factory, into the post-war era of corporate consumption. Suddenly, the entire narrative shifted. Your home was no longer a place to produce wealth. Instead, it became a showroom designed solely for you to consume corporate products.
The trap was set by massive industrial scaling. Corporate supermarket chains exploded, driving the price of eggs and bread so incredibly low that small, home-based producers just couldn't mathematically compete anymore. At the same time, factory automation and cheap offshore labor totally wiped out home piecework sewing. And of course, the rise of affordable domestic washing machines completely collapsed the neighborhood laundry market.
But the final nail in the coffin was a legal hammer: Euclidean suburban zoning laws. As the suburbs boomed, new local laws physically engineered neighborhoods to outright ban home occupations. Keeping a few chickens, suddenly a code violation. Running a beauty parlor in your kitchen, completely illegal. Boarding houses were outlawed to protect single-family property values. The law quite literally criminalized these women's income streams.
This quote perfectly captures the reality of the situation. Zoning wasn't neutral. It was gendered infrastructure. Those policies effectively isolated women in car-dependent suburbs, taking away their legal right to use their own kitchens, spare rooms, and backyards for independent wealth generation. It absolutely enforced a strict reliance on a single male breadwinner.
And it's fascinating because there was an intense regulatory tug-of-war happening behind the scenes over home-based work and labor standards. You had massive debates surrounding the Fair Labor Standards Act and government intervention. On one hand, feminists and labor advocates argued that home work exploited women. On the other hand, conservative administrations and the workers themselves fiercely argued for free enterprise and their right to maintain these cottage industries. It was a massive systemic battle over who actually gets to control production.
To make sure this transition stuck, a widespread cultural propaganda campaign helped erase the reality of all this wealth. Media and magazines completely rebranded these massive earnings as trivial cookie jar cash or just pin money. It was a deliberate effort to downplay women's labor, protect the narrative that men were the sole providers, and officially wipe this invisible economy off the books.
But here is the incredible twist to our explainer today. Part 3. The modern resurgence. Because this invisible economy, it never actually died. It just survived by going underground. And today, thanks to the internet and shifting local regulations, it is exploding right back into the mainstream.
It is absolutely wild how seamlessly the 1950s models map onto today's digital platforms. Think about it. The home crafters of the 50s? Those are today's Etsy sellers. The boarding houses? That's just Airbnb. The piecework sewing? That is Upwork or Fiverr. It's the exact same invisible economy recreated digitally. The only real difference is that today, corporate middlemen are skimming a percentage cut off the top.
And the data completely backs this up. The cycle is repeating. Right now, women make up an overwhelming 58% of new solo and micro business registrations. Millions of people are once again looking to their homes, their kitchens, and their digital networks to build wealth completely outside of the traditional corporate 9-to-5 structure. We are finally seeing the legal tide turn back too. We are literally reclaiming the kitchen table. Across the country, 38 states have systematically started deregulating home-based businesses. We're seeing explosive growth in cottage food laws, meaning home bakers can sell legally again. Cities are even passing ordinances to legalize backyard chicken flocks. We are dismantling those restrictive 1950s zoning laws step by step. So what's the big takeaway from these 1950s pioneers? It's simple. True financial independence doesn't necessarily come from climbing a corporate ladder. It relies entirely on maintaining control over your own supply chain, your own production, and your own distribution, no matter how small scale it might seem at first. It's time we finally recognize that the celebrated, booming prosperity of the 1950s wasn't just built in massive steel factories or by men in gray flannel suits. It was quietly, invisibly financed right from the kitchen tables, the backyards, and the sewing rooms of America by women running highly sophisticated micro-empires. They literally provided the secret floor that supported the American dream. So, I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought regarding our modern digital side hustles. As we rush to sign up for Etsy, Uber, and Airbnb, are we truly reclaiming the independent financial autonomy that those 1950s women had? Or are we just repeating history under a new boss, renting our independence right back from the digital gig platforms?
Definitely something to chew on as you navigate today's economy.